We put the tyrant's law on trial. The docking ring of Pilaster Station hummed under my boots as the patrol tug drifted past Bay Glass. I counted 9 cargo canisters tagged with gratitude tax seals, each glowing a faint amber in the vacuum. Their glow made my tongue taste like copper, a trick of the lights and memory. Out in the dark, the Concorde's bailiff frigate watched the station like a notary watching a debtor breathe. In 6 hours, they would levy the safety tithe again, and the colony would lose another month of food. I want the quorum live before they arrive, I said, pulling a sleeve tag tight. Open audience. Witness logs stamped and redundant. 1,000 eyes are cheaper than 1 torpedo, Archivist 12 said in my ear. The fleet mind's voice dry as paper and twice as patient. But 1,000 eyes will need a stage. Then we give them one, I said. We convene a public inquiry under the Gateway Charter as soon as they hail. The air near the hatch carried a faint citrus tang from scrubber gel, masking warm machinery smells and old rust. Lieutenant Cade met me in the passage with 2 security techs and a screen stacked with filings. His hair stuck up like an antenna in the recycled breeze. You're really going to drag them into a corridor of law on a cargo ring, he asked. Praetor Sayre eats hearings for breakfast. He eats silence, I said. We'll serve him questions. Powerline questions are the one ration they can't confiscate. At least, tell me you've planned an exit if he laughs and cuts transmission, Cade said, jogging to keep pace. His boots clicked on the deck like a muffled metronome. Ensign Pilar has a trick with the beacon lattice, I said. Ask her. Pilar, waiting by the ops blister, wore a comms harness like a ceremonial sash. The station's distress beacon is hardwired to coalition priorities, she said. I can stack a session layer over it. If the praetor breaks off mid-testimony, the beacon auto-broadcasts the cut as a breach pattern. That triggers a standing quorum call. He can refuse us, but he can't refuse the witnesses. Cade whistled low. That's a nasty little corridor. Legal and bright, I said. We'll keep it that way. Below us, civilian life tried to pretend it was normal. A baker vented steam through a valve at the ring's edge, scenting the corridor with cardamom and hot sugar. A child with a taped-up toy skimmer pressed her face to the viewport, fogging the glass while the tug scooted. 2 waste handlers leaned on a cart, trading gossip in tired voices about the last harvest's failure and whose cousin had pawned a wedding ring to pay dock fees. A woman's voice drifted from an open door. They'll take the protein vats next. You watch. They always thank you until there's nothing left to thank. I stopped long enough to write her phrase in my slate. Thank you until there's nothing left to thank. Archivist 12 felt the notation, and a quiet pulse of acknowledgement warmed my implant like a phantom fingertip. Commander, the archivist said, your disgust is noted. Your aim should be noted more. My aim is a reckoning, I said, by lights and record, not by guns. Power line. We don't break their knives, we take their measure. The Concorde's doctrine came printed on polished silver. Grateful subjects live, ungrateful subjects learn. They levied a gratitude tithe wherever their patrols reached. An administrative choke with legal veneer and real teeth. Pay and live lean. Refuse. And watch system infrastructure flagged irresponsible, subject to seizure for the greater good. They never said collar. They didn't have to. On the ring's spine, the ops blister curved toward starlight. I stepped into the fishbowl and let the cold pour over my skin. The glass carried a thin frost at the rim where the field met vacuum. My breath fogged and vanished. Beyond, the Concorde frigate loomed like an ink stroke across the station's thin halo. The stars were wet white needles, hard and clean. Judge Advocate Osi stood with her hands clasped, nails short and neat, eyes like a surgeon about to cut. I filed the notice. She said, "We'll convene under Clause 8, if he accepts the frame." "He'll accept because he thinks he can win by making us small," I said. "Or he'll accept because he wants you to say the wrong word," Ose replied. "And he'll make that word a noose." Archivist 12 threaded a route across my peripheral overlay, pale ink flowing like a calm river. Praetor Seer is priding himself on perfect compliance numbers, the AI said. He will choose presentation. He will choose to be seen. Good, I said. Let him be seen telling the people why their floors are empty. A chime incoming hail, the Concorde emblem hovering like an empty ring. I signaled Pilar with 2 fingers. She slid the beacon lattice into place, and the ops blister lights cooled to a deep morning color. Ose lifted her chin and breathed as if about to step on stage. Citizens of the Pilaster District, Praetor Carl Seer said when he resolved into view. His uniform was a dull, expensive slate. His voice tasted like chalk. Your gratitude accounting is overdue. The Concorde has extended mercy twice this cycle. Praetor, I said, and let my voice carry to the ring's deck through station channels. Under the Gateway Charter, I call a public inquiry on your levy. We request your doctrine, your method, your costs, and your claimed returns, spoken on the record of witnesses. His eyes thinned. You have no standing to summon me. The witnesses summon you, I said, and flicked 2 fingers. The lattice chimed across the ring. Phones vibrated in airless storage bays. Welded speakers woke. The baker, the waste handlers, the child with the skimmer, the dockyard night shift, farmers on the moon's dark side, and 300 strangers in ships that would never dock here again. They all became a quorum, visible in our corner of the sky as a stack of pale signatures. Praetor Seer smiled then, a patient teacher with a chalkboard and a lesson he had given 100 times, then let the Concorde teach. He said, Powerline, if he brings a lesson, we'll choose the test. We began with definitions. Ose's questions were scalpel clean. Cut to the handle. Seer answered like a scholar, defining gratitude as a civic duty and the tithe as a proportional contribution to shared safety, enforced by audit flags, loss caps, and controlled seizures. He called the seizures temporary stewardship. He called the flags maturity signals. Who audits the auditors? Osi asked, pen tapping once on her slate. Each tap sounded crisp. A metronome for the station's held breath. We audit ourselves, Seer said, amused. Our auditors pass an examination beyond your colony's scope. And in cases of error, she asked, we do not err, he said, which would read poorly later. And he knew it, and said it anyway. You describe your levy as gratitude, I said, and kept my voice low voltage. How do you measure it? What is the unit? The praetor blinked. That was our first loop seated. He expected argument, not arithmetic. Output, he said finally. Your station's safety risk is quantified by expected incident rate, weighted by strategic interest. We expect payment that shows due. Care, I said. You want the currency of care. That's not a unit. What do you count? He did not want to say the word hours. He did not want to say the word lives. He chose a safer middle. We count deficits. He said, you own a deficit. You pay us to buffer it. Who holds the escrow? Osi asked. Praetor Seer smiled again. Smaller. We do. Powerline when the banker owns the proof. The teller runs the trial. The first civilian vignette made it real. We opened the floor and took 2 statements. The baker spoke first. Voice shaking but steady. She raised a flour-dusted arm to show where she had traded a medical pumping machine for an allocation chitty. I said thank you. She said. I said it every time. But my sister's freezer went dark when you took the battery floor. She died at her voice cut. And the ops blister felt cold. A miner on the moon's far side spoke next, hands filthy with regolith dust that never washed clean. My boy is in dry school now, he said. No coolant for the factored lab. We pay your safe fee and learn our letters by candle. Prater Sayre cut in smooth. Emotion is not method. That's the point, I said. Method must face the lives it claims to protect. Archivist 12 slid a quiet pattern across my overlay, a question mark dressed as a line of figures. Behind the Concord's answers, the AI had found a seam, a chain of variance adjustments that always ratcheted in one direction. Mara, the AI said in my inner channel, using my name only when the math mattered. There is a subtle inflation in their risk multiplier. It increases when the witness list grows. He is using our audience to pad his charge. Can we prove it? I asked, keeping my eyes on the Praetor. Not yet, the archivist said. But the trend is clean. Then we give it time to get cleaner, I said. I felt Osei's gaze on my cheek, like a warm coin. Power lines some costs only speak when you let them accumulate. We moved to the corridor of law gambit. Pilar lifted a finger. The beacon lattice pulsed in visible bands across the station's viewport glass, a quiet aurora that made the child with the skimmer gasp. The bands encoded a simple promise: any break in testimony would be registered as breach in the audience's record, and the charter would demand remedial review. Sayre's lip twitched once when he recognized the structure. He was caught by the very thing he wanted to stage. Praetor, Osei said, you said the auditors never err. But you also said the unit is a deficit that you define. If we present a counteraccount, will you treat it as a return? Return what he asked. Your debts are countless. There's the word, I said softly, and Cade kicked my ankle to hide his grin. Countless was sloppy. Countless implied they didn't count at all. We offered the first return wasted heat. The station bled heat through old panels. Conquered frigates bleached it as hazard glow. We had fitted new plates on half the ring, capturing waste in salts. Those salts could run pumps, and those pumps could run nodes, and those nodes could carry the witness feed, which Sayre had just used to inflate his risk multiplier. We asked to offset his charge by the value of his own presentation. He refused. Of course. The refusal played well. By hour 2, the station air felt chewy with breath and nerves. Sweat gathered under my collarbone like a line of rain. The ops blister lights cycled to a dimmer hue to spare the grid. In the canteen, down the spine, someone dropped a tray and laughed too loudly afterward, a brittle sound that pinged through the ring's structure. Sayre spoke in calm paragraphs, a rhythm honed to reassure the long-hungry. We stand between you and the cold, he said. We accept your anger because your fear is harder to carry. We assume stewardship because you have failed to do so. Show us your costs, Osei said. Not your feelings. Show us your figures. Powerline, fear cannot be invoiced. Figures can. Praetor, I said. If the gratitude levy buys safety, the safety must be visible. List the incident you prevented this cycle. Name it. Let our witnesses hear it. He named a pirate flotilla. He named a solar flare that wasn't. He named a projected famine on a planet 3 weeks away and claimed our tithe helped someone else. He spoke as if the galaxy were a river and every upstream rock demanded our coins for downstream travelers. When he finished, His smile said he thought he had been generous. "Then we'll need your receipts," Osei said. Precisely as planned. The inquiry made him offer a sanitized ledger, names redacted, routes blurred enough to anchor the next loop. Archivist 12 pulled it into its mouth, chewed, and hummed. Pattern, it said. They always use a hub. 2 jumps out to wash the titles. That hub has a maintenance horizon we can see. If we force a reconciliation there, their own accounts will echo back. Echo back how Cade asked. By conservation, the AI said, they claim a closed system of care. We can show it losing energy at the wash, or show the loss matches their levy. Either is ruin. I looked past the ops blister to the Concord frigate. Its bow lights were steady, like a heartbeat, pretending to sleep. Can we do this without jamming their ship, I asked. Yes, the archivist said, by asking. Then we ask. Power line if they claim a closed hand. We ask to see both palms. We pivoted the inquiry to reconciliation. Pilar's hands danced over her console, skimming the lattice. Osei framed the request with a surgeon's care. You said your stewardship returned value across systems, she said. Then reconciliation must honor both directions. Under Clause 13, we ask a mirror account on your hub relay your inputs versus our outputs certified before these witnesses. Denied, Sari said at once. Noted, Osei said, and ticked the breach flag. The lattice pulsed. The witness stack glimmered as 1,000 small signatures lit a rim. Siri flinched. Barely. He was being drawn into the corridor. A refusal would summon a wider quorum. He had wanted an audience. He had one now that could pull his own superior's eyes. He did not like being the lesson. Accepted, he said after the shortest of long pauses. Within operational security, they sent a digest anonymized flows, sums with bounding boxes. Archivist 12 ate it like bread. The taste in my throat turned metallic again as the AI built a model from the crumbs. Mara, it said, the variance trend is confirmed. The bigger the audience, the bigger the risk multiplier he claims. He is charging for being watched. Make the watching pay, I said, but not to him. Powerline witness should be a shield, not a syllable they bill. We took a brief recess, and I walked the spine with Cade. The ring's curvature pulled the floor a little tighter under my feet. The gravity felt like a hand that remembered me. We passed the baker, who had her flower tub back under lock, and the child, now asleep with the toy skimmer clutched like a small moon. Ozone drifted from a maintenance alcove, a sharp, clean bite, far away. Someone played a stringed instrument on thin notes, brave and stubborn, like wire stretched over a chasm. I'll say it, Cade murmured. We could end this with a torpedo. We could end a lot with a torpedo, I said. But we didn't come to be enders. And if the end comes to us, that's when we stand, I said. Not before. Archivist, Cade asked. You ever get tired of being right? I am often wrong. The AI said. I am just rarely mistaken the same way. Back in the blister, Osei rubbed her eyes and smiled without showing teeth. He felt the breach, she said. He hates being a cautionary tale. He'll try to make us the caution, I said. He'll provoke. He'll offer a face-saving exit that costs our people more. And you'll refuse him, Osei said. I'll ask him to count, I said, and felt the archivist brighten. Powerline, the cleanest blade in any dispute, is a number. We laid the next loop. I asked Praetor Sere to define gratitude as a function of cooperation. He agreed too easily, because that definition let him sell the levy as social glue. Then I asked how he measured cooperation when the audience increased. He said it rose. Then Archivist 12 presented the variance trend as a question. not an accusation. Praetor, the AI said, polite as rain. Our witnesses increase your charge. Is your doctrine that visibility is a risk? Crowds panic, he said. Your audience increases hazard. Then why are your outreach teams performing public ceremonies? Osei asked. Why do your levies always land at shift change? Why do you demand to be seen? Seer's mouth drew tight. We report to our citizens, some of whom, I said, are watching. Care to greet them? He refused to look into the witness pane, which was its own kind of greeting. The second civilian vignette hurt more. A nurse with a soft voice described the triage she had performed during the last controlled seizure. When the Concorde lifted the pressure pumps from the south ring, she learned how long bone marrow patients could live without a constant drip. I did my job, she said. I said thank you for safety. But you didn't pay those days back. Sarah replied like a function chart. You owe safety to your children, he said. And you owe truth to their parents, Osei answered. Powerline, children should inherit light, not interest on a threat. We moved to the mirror accounts, the heart of what we planned, the seed of what we would try later at system scale. The witness quorum voted by fingerflick and eye dwell to accept the framing. The lattice ticked. We fed the Concorde's own digest against our waste recovery tables, our repairs, our volunteer hours, and the hours our miners had donated to other stations with worse air. Archivist 12 did not gloat when the array converged. It simply sang a figure in my ear. Net outflow, it said, from us to them. Magnitude 47% of levy. They charged twice for the same shadow. What shadow, Cade asked. Projected hazard on projected witnesses. The AI said, they charge us to watch ourselves. I let Osei take the mic. She read the figure quiet as confession, laid it between us like a broken plate. Then she asked if it would form our first return. Praetor Sere said no. He explained that our voluntary contributions did not meet their standards. He explained that their internal audit classified our work insufficiently grateful. Gratitude is not a standard, Osei said. It's an emotion. On the contrary, Seer said, it's a rule. Powerline, when feeling becomes a rule, somebody is making chains. We adjourned the first session at station dusk. The lights along the spine softened to amber. The ring groaned once as the thermal gradient tilted. In the canteen, bowls clinked, and laughter grew easier, and then stopped hard when the Concorde's boarding skiff crawled into view. It looked like a spider made of tariffs. They're not coming aboard, I said, and Osei nodded once. Pilar already had the lattice uplifted like a drawn curtain. Cade's techs stood with non-lethal launchers and a certainty that the first shot would be a camera. They won't shoot, Archivist 12 murmured. His doctrine is control. A firefight is chaos. He will try a paper blade. The paper blade was a lean on the station's beacon itself. Sayre claimed we had misused a distress channel for political theater. He demanded a fine payable in batteries and seed vault access. He framed it as a kindness, pay the fine. And we would be allowed to speak again next cycle. I tasted iron. We speak now, I said, and we pay no fine for witnesses. We will prove misuse, he said. We will demonstrate you sought fame. Fame, I said, is a cheaper drug than safety. But you are the one who keeps asking for a crowd. Powerline, if he calls it a fine, count the hand that reaches. That night, station night, the dark was relative, and the stars kept their own time. I stood in the observation blister alone and watched the conquered frigate's running lights crawl slow paths around its hull. The glass was cold enough to ache against my palm. Far below, The planet's side swam with storm bands like handwriting erased and written again. "Say it," Archivist 12 said in my ear. "Say what I asked." Breath fogging the glass. "That you want to take every battery we have and sling it into their hull," the AI said, soft with a friend's permission. I want to make them stop," I said. "I don't care about the bow." "You do," the archivist said. "That is why I am here." We shared the quiet. Machines somewhere cycled, a soft thrum in the bones. I heard, or imagined, an old song from a childhood video, my mother playing a cheap guitar, the strings jangling against her ring. The room smelled faintly of frost and oil and the ghost of fruit from someone's pocket. "Teach me then," I whispered. "I do not teach," the archivist said. "I show totals. You choose. Powerline, I will not learn obedience. I will learn balance." We wrote the morning's plan with coffee and with the quiet panic that rides under purpose before a fight. 3 escalations were in the air, though we could name only 2. First, we would force a deeper mirror account at the Concord's hub, using their own hub maintenance window. Second, we would open the inquiry to a traveling peer review captains and civics from other stations, so their multiplier trick would backfire on their reputation rather than our bill. Third, unknown, a shadow in the corner of the plan that made my teeth itch. The lore stamp came to me like a postcard from a future we had not earned yet. I wrote it and sent it to Osei and the archivist for placement in the record. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by callers. Osei's reply was a tiny smile. "Then we better make the numbers sing." Powerline, a song you can verify will outlive a shout. When the Concorde returned to the hearing, Praetor Sayre looked rested and faintly pleased, as if he had seen the ending and liked it. He opened by offering us a generous extension if we consented to a gratitude ceremony. It was a trap built of flowers. We refused and asked for the hub reconciliation again. He denied and took the breach. The lattice pulsed. The witness stack brightened. The larger audience made his multiplier climb another invisible step. "Mara," the archivist murmured, "I can make the mirror now, without a jam. By protocol," it said, "a reconciliation challenge at the hub will propagate. It is lawful. It will demand they match our numbers with theirs, line by line, or accept our returns as offsets. If they refuse, then the ledger will show their refusal." The AI said, "The refusal will be a weight." "Do it," I said, and tasted the sour sting of adrenaline under my tongue like battery acid. Power line refusal writes its own name in the margin. The station vibrated a hair as Pilar's lattice reached through safe channels and rattled the Concorde's hub. Somewhere 2 jumps out. A maintenance supervisor cursed a ghost. The mirror account challenge unfurled like a flag over a courthouse. Not a beam, not a bomb, but a demand to line up the figures and show where the safety went. The witness stack watched. The Concorde's relay paused, hiccuped, and then began to send. Numbers are clean until they cut. Then they bleed. "Found it," Archivist 12 said. Their buffer account is double counting projected witness risk as both input and loss. It is a recursive fear tax. That's the 47%. "Frame it," OC said. "We'll put it to the quorum in words that can't be bent." The second set of civilian lines came from a spacer passing through. Not ours. Nobody's. Just a tired man with a scar where a pressure mask had bitten wrong once. "I seen this show," he said. "They tell you it's for your neighbor. And your neighbor gets the same speech. And in the end, you both live quiet in the dark." "Not today," the baker said from the back. and a ripple of soft laughter cracked the room's tension like ice in warm drink. Praetor, OC said, "Your method charges us for the act of witnessing ourselves. You call it safety. We call it a loop that eats the future." Ciray's smile thinned to paper. "You have misunderstood," he said. "Our models are complex." "Complexity is not an alibi," I said. "Powerline, if your reason needs a maze, it is not a reason." He pivoted to the paper blade again, this time with teeth. The Concorde frigate announced a pre-seizure warning on the station's south ring pumps, the nurse's pumps. He claimed a violation of transmitter ethics. He claimed risk. He claimed the right to be thanked in advance for harm he threatened to cause. He wanted us to beg on camera. "We'll counter-seize," Cade hissed in my ear. "Give the word, and I'll lock the skiffs to their docking wings." "We won't win that fight," I said. "Not with fists. You want to win with the other thing," he said. "Fine. But this is where good people get ground into examples. This is where examples get returned." I said, "Archivist, I can prepare a system-scale reflection." The AI said slowly, tasting each syllable like a fruit it had not eaten. "Not a weapon. A reckoner. We could reflect their charges back to their own ledger flow. The witnesses would see the line move." Cost Ose asked, voice thin. "Power draw," the AI said. "Strain. 2 of our recovery plates will burn crisp. The station will lose heat for 1 cycle. The south ring will run thin. People could freeze," Cade said. "Or they'll watch the line move," I said. "And we keep it in the light. Powerline, sometimes you pay in comfort so others stop paying in blood." We asked the quorum. We did not hide the cost. We did not sweeten it. The witness stack brightened, names and marks flaring as if the station could breathe light. The vote came back in under a minute. Proceed. Even the nurse voted yes. Voice steady as a beam. "Better one cold night than a cold decade," she said. Pilar's fingers moved like rain. The lattice stretched to its widest frequency. The beacon sang a clean tone that made my teeth vibrate. Sweet and bright, like the first time I climbed a tower as a child and the wind tried to knock me away. Loving me too rough. Archivist 12 poured the mirror count into the Concorde's relay, and the relay, bound by the charter and by its own pride, accepted the handshake. "You can still stop," Praetor Ciray said, and for the first time a crack marred his signal. "You can still answer," OC said. The reckoner lit. Power ghosted through our plates. Heat dropped. The glass of the blister pricked my palm with cold needles. The station hummed a note that felt like a string tightening. Tighter, until the pitch stopped rising and held like a promise. Across the witness pane, numbers marched. The Concorde's buffer account tried to swallow the reflection and choked. Their own multiplier met our mirror and doubled back. For a heartbeat, you could see the doctrine's mouth eating its tail. "Return," Archivist 12 said softly. And the figure changed. The Concorde's ledger showed a debit, tiny compared to all the hungers in space, but not ours. The witnesses saw it. The buffer account bowed. The first cost came due. One of our heat plates cracked and went black. The blister temperature bit the inside of my nose and made my eyes water like I'd chopped cold onions. I thought of the baker's hands and the nurse's pump and the child's skimmer feathering along glass. I thought of my mother's guitar. Praetor Ciray stared at the pane like a man who had been offered salt when he expected sugar. "This is illegal," he said. "It is reconciliation," Ose said. "Under your own clause." "It is defamation by arithmetic," he said. "Powerline, if truth defames you." The wound was already there. The second cost came quicker. An overworked converter coughed and died on the south ring. The nurse spoke in my ear calmly, already triaging again, already moving a line from one pump to another. "You've got 30 minutes of comfort left," she said. After that, we go to blankets and singing. Make it mean something. "Archivist," I said. "How long to hold the reckoner?" 3 minutes. The AI said. "Then the hub can legally throttle us." "Make them throttle," Osei said. "Make them own it while everyone watches." The witness pane grew. Captains from other stations joined, curious and hungry for a different story. A teacher on a belt rock piped her class feed in. A dozen children watched with round eyes and chewed knuckles. Somewhere, a union clerk in a board office added our inquiry to a digest with a sticky note check. This. The Concord's proud multiplier trembled. "Prater," I said, "your doctrine is a loop. Your tithe costs more when we bring our friends to listen. You charge us to look." He said nothing. He was listening to somebody older than either of us in his other ear. And that older voice likely said, "The way distant storms speak to sailors through the hull." Sire raised a hand, as if to calm an audience that was already very quiet. "We will adjust," he said. "We will apply discretion. End your abuse, and we will be merciful." That sentence, Osi said, careful and bright, is going to look very bad in the transcript. Powerline, mercy that demands silence is just a quieter knife. The hub throttled us. The reckoner dimmed but held its last line like a nail through tough wood. In the canteen, someone whooped once, and someone else sobbed. And the sound those two made together felt like the first rain after a long ashfall. "We're cold," Cade said, rubbing his forearms. "You have your figure. Pull back." "Not yet," I said. "Archivist, mark the ledger, publicly. I will file a provisional return with the coalition," the AI said, notarized by witness quorum. "Make it pretty," I said. "Make it readable." "I do not do pretty," the AI said. "I do clear." The child with the toy skimmer awake again, cheeks red from the cold and happy to be awake for a reason, pressed her skimmer to the glass and traced a line that matched the falling temperature readout. "It's going down," she whispered. Her breath made a small cloud. She smiled anyway. Prater Sayer sat very still. He had a face built for calm. He wore it now like armor. His eyes, though, betrayed the calculations. He was counting costs different from ours. He was counting calls from superiors, calls from subordinates, calls from auditors who did. In fact, sometimes "End this and we will discuss a reduction," he said. "We'll end when the witnesses say so," I said. The nurse said so first. Her voice was steady and soft and very tired. "We're at blankets," she said. "The children are singing. They like the math. It sounds like weather. That seems like a good end." Osei lowered her chin. Pilar's fingers eased the lattice down until the beacon sang a gentler note and the station stopped vibrating its bones. The blister warmed by degrees, slow as forgiveness. My nose stopped aching. I could taste my own breath again, warm and human. "Powerline, we paid a night to buy a standard." Saray exhaled, a breath he would not admit he had been holding. "You have made your point," he said. "Not yet," Osi said. "The point is the precedent. Read it." Archivist 12 projected the draft to all witnesses and to the Concord's relay because the law is less a wall than a mirror you can walk through if you name the rooms. The precedent was short. It said charging for witness presence is outlawed under charter inquiry. It said buffer accounts cannot treat visibility as hazard. It said reconciliation must accept returns that meet physical criteria, not emotional ones. It said gratitude is not a metric. Praetor Sere stared at the words as if they were a wound he could not locate the blade for. Then he said the only true thing he had said all day. "You will make enemies," he said. "That means we made a choice," I said. Down on the ring, the baker pulled a warm, rare loaf from a jury-rigged coil and broke it with her neighbor and the child, steam lifting in the cold, like spirits rising out of old grief. The miner on the moon's far side lay on his bunk and felt warm blanket weight, like a vote counted. The nurse rubbed her eyes with the heel of one palm and let herself cry for 30 seconds while the pumps ticked and held. The spacer with the scar bought a round for people he had never met. The teacher on the belt rock asked her students what they thought fairness tasted like, and one said cardamom and another said numbers. "Tomorrow," Cade said under his breath, "we'll be hungrier. Today we're not silent." I said, "Power line. Hunger without dignity is starvation. Hunger with dignity is a fast." Praetor Sere's relay blinked while he listened again to the older voice. Then he leaned forward with a look I recognized from my own mirror once, on a day when I had been wrong and knew it and would not say it yet. "We will appeal," he said. "Of course," O.C. said. "We'll see you at Aurora Court." He flinched at the name. Everyone did. The court was not a place. It was a traveling quorum in a hull where numbers spoke louder than admirals. It came to stations that needed it and captains who demanded it. It made careers and broke them. It did not kill. It did not forgive. It remembered. I felt the room breathe as the word moved like weather. The nurse hummed a tune to the blankets. The baker laughed and started crying in the same breath. The child with the skimmer pressed her toy to the glass and drew a circle where the court's beacon would appear if we called it. "Archivist," I said, "send the summons." "It is sent." The AI said, "Quiet as rainfall. It will arrive in 29 hours. The docket is wide. The appetite is larger." "Good." I said, "I want him to explain to them how gratitude is counted. And I want you to explain to them the cost you chose," Archivist 12 said gently. "I will," I said. "Powerline, a price you say aloud is different from a price you hide. We had less than a day to build a record that could stand in that light." Osei began drafting the pathway, fingers a steady storm. Pilar tuned the lattice for long-range clarity. Cade walked the spine and asked cold people for warmer words. I visited the South Ring and thanked the nurse, personally, and meant it in the plainest way, in the maintenance bay. Heat ghosts swirled like visible breath. The plate we'd burned lay on a pallet, black and beautiful, the fracture lines like a map of a country that had decided to be a river instead. I rested my hand on it, felt the cold climb into my skin like history. "Was it worth it?" the nurse asked. Voice like the end of a long day that still has a longer night. "Yes," I said. And when she looked at me like a person and not a title, I didn't blink. "That's good," she said, and smiled small, because I would have made it worth it even if it wasn't. On my way back, the child with the skimmer fell into step beside me with the simple trust of someone who had not learned yet to sell it for food. "Are we going to win?" she asked. "We're going to be seen," I said. "Is that the same?" "Not always," I said. "But it's where the math starts. Powerline visibility is not victory, but it is a unit." Praetor Sere withdrew to his frigate and left a deputy to mind the public channel. His ship dimmed its lights the way predators dim their eyes when they pretend to nap. I knew he was calling mentors and enemies, and asking both for the same thing, a way to keep the doctrine and the mask. "Mara," Archivist 12 said, "There is a message for you alone." From him, "No." The AI said, "From a clerk in their audit office. Anonymous." They sent 6 lines of code that matches the buffer scheme. They wrote, "I have watched this for 3 years. Do something with the last line." What's the last line? A simple comment. Gratitude multiplier applied twice when audience ate 500 by policy. By policy. Osei repeated when I told her. Good. Let's make the policy ashamed. Yes, we built the exhibit. We layered civilian lines like planks under our argument so it could hold weight. We drew clean pictures with few colors and numbers that sang. We practiced saying the costs first. We practiced saying the word return like a bell. Commander, Cade said, you spoke pretty about dignity. If the court cuts us the same tomorrow, will you say the same? If they cut us tomorrow, I said, it will be because we miscounted today. Then we count again. He nodded once, satisfied not because he believed, but because he knew I did. Power line. Courage is not certainty. It is a promise to check. At ring midnight, the storm bands below flashed with lightning. The lights strobed across the glass and made our faces ghost over Seray's dim hull. I saw my own reflection hover over the Praetor's ship and thought of callers and teachers, and how sometimes good lessons hurt. The air smelled like warm metal again as the station's heat crawled back into ducts and clothes and bones. Archivist 12 hummed a low, steady chord in my ear, and then changed it until it matched my breath. You're afraid, it said. Not unkindly. Yes, I said. Do you want me to lie? No, it said. I want you to know that I am, too. You don't get afraid, I said. You get variance. I am not afraid of losing. It said, I am afraid of becoming a caller. I closed my eyes. The cord matched my breath again and steadied me like a hand on my shoulder in a crowd. Power line. Even machines choose, or they let someone choose for them. Aurora Quartz beacon flashed on the rim of the system like a lighthouse raised from 1,000 quiet votes. It painted our glass with a straight line of clean light. The witnesses saw it. The baker whispered a prayer to no one and everyone. The nurse pressed her forehead to the pump for a second and then went back to work. The child with the skimmer fell asleep under a table with a blanket that smelled like cardamom and machine oil. Praetor Seray's lights brightened, just a touch. The way a man stands straighter when the door opens to a room where he will be judged by people he taught to judge. He would come. He would speak. He would call the court a stage and congratulate it for existing. And then he would try to change its rules. We would ask him to read his doctrine as if it were a lullaby for a child who could count. Power line when the court arrives. Your voice is a weapon or a wound. Aurora Court arrived without horns or fanfare, just a clean line of light and a schedule stamp that felt like the universe remembering how to count. Its hull carried the quiet of math after shouting. The beacon's tone slid through the station's bones like a flute over water, making even the grumpy air recyclers sound-tuned. Children woke because the sound pretended to be a story. We prepped the floor with warmth and bread and warnings. The baker handed out small slices of cardamom loaf to any witness who promised to stay the whole first hour. The nurses' pumps hummed like bees against the South Ring's new blankets. The canteen coffee tasted like burnt courage and work. I cleaned the ops blister glass with my own hands because I did not want a smear to be the reason someone doubted a number. Powerline, clean glass and clean figures make the same kind of silence. A civilian spacer I'd never met leaned on the railing by the viewport, breath steaming in little bursts. Is it true they'll make him read his own doctrine? He asked. If he wants to win, I said. And if he can't read it, then we'll read it for him. out beyond the glass. The Concorde frigate adjusted its station-keeping jets with the fussy precision of a man fixing his tie. Praetor Sayre's channel stayed dark, but his deputies scrolled through polite nothings like a clerk stacking paper to feel busy. The court's signal remained steady. No drama, no intimidation, just presence like a well-made table. Judge Advocate Osei smoothed her jacket and touched the coin she wore at her throat. Archivist 12 dimmed my peripheral overlays until only the witness pane and the court's docket time remained. Pilar stood with her palms on the lattice console, as if warming her hands at a small legal fire. Commander Mara Ansel, a voice said in the system-wide common, accented in a way no one could place because it had been translated too many times to carry a home. Aurora Court convenes at docket 40-1288K. Parties present will acknowledge. Pilaster District Witnesses, OC said. Concord Praetorate Unit Cal Sayre and Attached Audit Relay. Coalition Fleet Mind Archivist 12. And you, the voice said gently. And me, I said. Noted. The voice said. A word that in their mouth was a seal. Powerline, a court that speaks like a scale does not need to shout. Before the set began, the court invited 3 first voices from the witness stack as ground. They did not ask for eloquence. They asked for a picture the numbers could stand on. The baker spoke about measuring cardamom by smell because the weights were gone, a cup and a guess, and a nose that could find the old balance when new rules took the pans. The nurse described the sound a pump makes when it wants to quit and how you can talk it through 1 more hour if the room is singing. A student from the Belt Rock sent a shaky video of her class drawing the tithe as a loop on a board with smudged chalk. Sticky fingers making neat circles turn into ghost countries. Aurora Court thanked them with the absence of condescension. We are full, the voice said. Praetor Cal Sayre, state your doctrine plainly. Use fewer than 100 words per element. Keep feeling to the side. Sayre appeared. He had shaved too close, and the lighting on his ship made his jawline look like a ruler. Gratitude is civic obligation, he said. Levy is proportional to projected danger. Visibility increases danger. Auditors do not err. Stewardship is control during failure. Failure is any deviation from our optimal model. Define visibility, the court said. Witness presence. Peer attention. Media quorum. Sayre said. All increase hazard through crowd dynamics. Define your buffer method. The court said. A projection of risk variance allocated to a reserve, charged to those who present elevated visibility factors. Sayre said crisply, his eyes flicking as he read an invisible prompt. Powerline, he called us dangerous for looking. We called it looking for danger. OC stepped in with a voice like a smooth blade. Under your method. A public inquiry increases liability. An appeal increases liability. A child watching increases liability. No. Sayre said, too quick. Your buffer code. Archivist 12 said, gentle as rain. Applies the multiplier twice when audience exceeds 500 by policy. That is internal, Sayre snapped. Internal policies are still hands. OC said, they leave prints. Aurora Court did not smile. Praetor, it said. The doctrine's language shortens a chain into a loop. Show your receipts or declare them absent. Sayre presented the sanitized ledger he had offered before, with its blurred roots and shadow sums. The court overlaid it with the mirror account we had forced at the hub. 2 figures glowed like contrary constellations. The room smelled like warmed metal again as the lattice drew power to carry the overlay cleanly. I tasted the nickel sting in the air and thought of bleeding noses in winter. Power line when two maps refuse to kiss. A river runs between them. Aurora Court's next move was the corridor of law turned outward. It called for reputation quorum captains, union clerks, independent auditors, and the board, suspicious souls who love rules not because they bend them, but because they measure all pretenders by their weight. 23 new squares lit along the witness pane. A salvage captain with tattoos like tide charts squinted at the buffer math and snorted through his nose like a tug starting cold. A union clerk with hair in a lopsided bun adjusted her glasses entirely for effect and began to hum numbers under her breath. A teacher on the belt rock told her class to count quietly. Explain why visibility is hazard, the court said. Crowds misbehave. Seer said no publicity encourages rebellion. Attention draws pirates. Then your outreach ceremonies, the clerk asked. Voice dry. Those aren't visibility, controlled. Seer said, we deliver safety narratives with guardrails. You can't sell a parade and bill the watchers for a riot you invented, the salvage captain said. Powerline, their guardrails were just fences around a collection plate. Saray pivoted to control language, to guardianship, to the dignity of preventing chaos. He did not say caller. He did not need to. The court let him talk himself into a mild corner, then opened a window and asked us to blow in the weather. Archivist 12. It said, speak your return method to a child. A mirror count is a dare, the AI said softly. I ask your numbers to match mine. If your numbers cannot, I return the difference to the ledger where it belongs. The dare is not a fight. It is a balance. The Belt Rock class clapped. The salvage captain smirked like a man who found a knot in a rope. The union clerk wrote, quick as rain buffer counts twice above 500 watchers. Call it shame tax. Prater, the court said, your buffer's shame tax is outlawed by charter. You will argue why it should not be. Siray's face did an interesting thing then. He smiled like a person in an old picture trying to meet a photographer's idea of a smile. Visibility is power, he said. Power must be licensed. And who sells the license? Ozzy asked. We do, he said, and heard it the same instant we did. Powerline when they admit the store is theft. You do not need a gun. The court recessed for 12 minutes to allow systems to breathe. The ops blister filled with small sounds that were almost human again. Spoons. Shoes. Someone humming off-key. A maintenance tech passed me a cup of water that tasted faintly of copper and glare. The child with the skimmer woke and whispered to Pilar, solemn, like a diplomat asking about borders. Do numbers get tired? Pilar smiled and tucked a blanket corner around tiny boots. They get clearer. The second escalation arrived in the pause, standing disguised as a kindness. A Concorde courier drone pinged our station channel, asking for a side pane, a process conversation, a way to settle without messy public precedent so we could all go home warm and call it wisdom. It offered us an immediate reduction and a promise to review the multiplier quietly later. No, I said. You could save heat, Cade murmured. Heat will lose again next winter, I said. You'll make a lifetime enemy, Osei warned softly. I was born with a few, I said, and my reflection in the glass looked older than yesterday, but straighter. Powerline, a secret rebate, is just a bribe with teeth. Aurora Court reconvened with a sound like a breath being taken by a very large person. We have heard doctrine and objection. It said, now we call ledger. The ledger set piece was a stage of receipts, visible to the last seat. We showed the cracked plate, black and river-lined, a declared cost. We showed the converter we had burned, and the blankets we had bought with credit and we didn't own yet, a declared cost. We showed the nurse's triage notes and her signature on the hold harm plan. We showed the mirror account and the hub's throttle. We showed the anonymous comment line, NOS, by policy and its fingerprint along 6 cycles. Each image carried a timestamp and a line of plain words. Any party may object to a line, the court said. Sayer objected to the comment. Anonymous. He said, fabricated. The union clerk shook her head slowly, smiling like gravity. It matches the compiled conduit. She said, you can deny the handwriting. You can't deny the ink. Prater, the court said, you may produce your policy in full to rebut. Saray did not move. Or not. The court said, writing a line with its voice. Power line if he will not open the safe. We count the coins on his floor. Aurora Court then called for a quarter of law gambit I had only read about in board trainings, the white question. Any witness could ask one question that forced a yes-no in fewer than 10 words. 3 white questions would be chosen by vote. The baker asked first, is watching you a risk that we must buy? Saray said, no, which made the audience rustle and the union clerk's pen scratch harder. The nurse asked second will, you stop charging our children to learn. Sayer said, we will calibrate. And Aurora Court said, that is not yes or no. And he closed his mouth without chewing his own tongue, only by old practice. A child on the belt rock raised a hand, and the teacher let her go ahead with a hand on his shoulder. If we sing, can you not bill us, she asked. And the salvage captain laughed out loud. One bark like a ship's horn punched for joy. Saray said, because he had to. Yes. And the court wrote it. Power line, a promise given under light is a nail through the lid. Then the final escalation came the way storms come. As a pressure front you can smell before it rains. Concord launched a jurisdiction challenge. A second frigate slid into the outer lane like a shark shaped roughly like a treaty. It claimed Aurora Court's summons exceeded its authority, and that all records from this proceeding should be impounded pending a gratitude review. They wanted to wrap the light in silk and sell it at a higher price later. Archivist, I whispered, I can anchor the records with a system scale scatter. The AI said, every ship with a beacon will hold a piece. It is lawful as a preservative. It is heavy. How heavy, Osei asked. Very. The AI said, we will brown out the northern spine for 2 hours. Your oven coils will be cold. Your coffee will taste like ghosts. Your child will draw fog pictures with gloves on. I looked at the cracked plate on its palette like an exhibit that might be a headstone and felt the shape of my answer before I made it. Do it, I said. We asked them to watch. Now let them carry. Powerline, if you ask for witnesses, you must trust them with the weight. Scatter hit like rain thrown across a parade. Every ship, every co-op, every home with a legal beacon in range caught a shard of the record and signed it with a little flash of pride. The station dimmed. The baker turned her oven off with a sigh and a joke. The canteen owner poured coffee that tasted like grudges and said it was fine because we had plenty of those to stir in. Concord's second frigate filed a protest. The court wrote it down and kept going like a boat that notes waves while crossing a river. The union clerk braided 3 separate citations into a neat whip and handed it to the court by email, which it accepted like a bartender who knows when to cut off a regular. The salvage captain murmured to someone just out of frame, this one will sing in dock bars for a year. Prater Cal Sere. Aurora Court said, the buffer scheme's double multiplier is outlawed at once. The pre-seizure warning is rescinded at once. Returns will be credited to Pilaster's ledger now. Visible. Visible, he echoed, and the word tasted wrong in his mouth suddenly. Visible, the court repeated, and the witness pane lit as every shard updated at once. Powerline receipts made public are a stronger lock than any door. The court then turned to costs and asked us to say them again. We did. The plate, the converter, the blankets, the hours, the song, the hunger that would feel like fasting only if we remembered we had chosen. Do you want restitution for the plate? The court asked, almost gentle. No, I said. We want the law to know its name. It has one, the court said. We will write it. The name it used was not flowery. It did not say mere justice because that is a poet's word. It said, no account may bill for witness presence in any proceeding. It said, no buffer may count projection twice. It said returns must be measured in physical effects first, not in sentiment. It said stewards do not own escrows they supervise. It said auditors err, and their errors are visible. Praetor Sere raised his chin like a man offering it to a barber with a straight razor and no reason to be friendly. I will appeal, he said. Of course, Aurora Court said again, and did not sound bored. Power line precedent is a river. Appeals are just stones you throw. The court requested closing remarks from both sides. Less than 100 words. No metaphors that tried to sneak in back doors. No myths. Ours would come later. His came now. The Concord keeps the lanes clear, Sathi said. We do hard things so stations like yours can bake bread and sing. You do not know the wolves at your doors. We do. Our doctrine is imperfect, but your rebellion will end with pirates counting your rations. We ask for respect. We will carry your risk if you carry your duty. Yeah, the salvage captain made a face like a man who found a rat in a steam pot. The union clerk didn't blink. The teacher wrote wolves on the board, and then, after a whispered discussion with a 7-year-old, added, we are not sheep. Aurora Court thanked the praetor without warmth and invited us to respond later. After it wrote quickly and clearly, like a medic in a clean room filling a tag over a living wrist. It stamped 2 orders for immediate effect and 3 recommendations for policy review. It commanded the Concord to recalculate 6 cycles of levies under the new rules and to show returns within 2 days. It published the returns in the witness pane, which made the baker clap her floury hands once, which made a white cloud rise like a soft explosion. It requested that the Concord apologize without glamour. It did not require it. It did not demand humiliation because humiliation is cheap and makes bad law. Powerline dignity held in the teeth is still dignity. Aurora Court then asked if any witness wished to accept responsibility for choosing the costs that made the record possible. I raised my hand because my name had weight in my mouth, and I wanted to feel it. I did. I said, I chose heat plates and blankets and scatter. The nurse caught the children when the room cooled. The baker fed the room. The archivist made a mirror without breaking a ship. If I chose wrongly, I will stand in the cold first. Noted, the court said. Its noted could hold a person's spine when it was tired. Praetor Sere asked for a recess to consult with counsel. He was granted 6 minutes. His signal dimmed. When it returned, he offered the reduction again, bigger, dressed in the clean tone of someone seeking a handshake after being mugged by numbers. Cade leaned toward me. You could take it, he murmured. No one would call it dirty. They would, I said, even if they didn't say it. They'd taste it. Do you ever get tired of being the story? He asked softly. Yes, I said, but I'm not the story. The ledger is. Powerline, people end, records walk. The Concorde began recalculating, live to show it could comply without complaint. Each recalculation produced visible credits, small as seeds, scattering across the witness pane. People took screenshots like vacationers taking pictures of a rainstorm ending. The union clerk added up the credits in her head because some people do that for fun. The salvage captain took off his hat and scratched his scalp like a cat pretending to consider philosophy. Aurora Court prepared to adjourn for the first session pending the full recalculation. Before it could, the deputy on Sayre's Bridge, perhaps new enough to feel insult as shame and courage as certainty, cut in with a line that echoed like a dropped wrench. "If you had paid gladly," he said, "none of this would be necessary." He froze. Someone on his side cut his mic late. "You heard it," Osei said softly. "Write it." The court wrote it, not as a dagger, but as a fact. Power line when they name the caller. You do not need to point. We set the station to recovery. The canteen put a pot of soup on the slowest coil like a promise. The nurse drank water with salt, like she had run a marathon, and laughed at the metaphor while telling her interns to rest. The child with the skimmer played with her toy in a patch of sun that had found a way through the glass like a curious cat. The cracked plate lay on its pallet. Not tragic, just honest. Archivist 12 dimmed its cord in my ear to something like a heart at rest. "Mara," it said. "There is a note on the witness pane from the auditor clerk." "Read it," I said. "I will summarize." It said, "Careful. They say their grandfather wrote the multiplier line after a riot that killed 30. They say he thought he was saving lives by taxing crowds. They say the line became a habit that became doctrine, that became a prophet." The note ended with 7 words, "I do not want his statue." I stared at the glass until my face dissolved into the light and came back with the station behind it, with all its dents and kindness. "We will not break his statue," I said. "We'll put a plaque under it that says what happened." That is the same thing to some, the AI said. "It's the right thing to me." Power line, we do not erase, we recount. The Belt Rock class sent a new chart, drawn with better smudges, 2 loops, one labeled Fear Tax, one labeled Song. The second loop fed people. The first loop fed itself. The teacher's caption read, "Choose your circle." A boy in the back had written, very small, also, "You can draw lines." I wanted to shake his hand. Aurora Court pinged the docket for the second session 3 hours. In that space, Concorde recalculated and recalculated again. The returns climbed. The witness pane showed credits to other stations, to small farms, to a clinic on a moon where a friend of the nurse had trained. The baker's neighbor shouted when he saw the line for his sister's freezer replacement. He covered his mouth and then shouted again because he could. We prepared our closing. Osei cut paragraphs into slim lines until they looked like bones that would bend without breaking. Pilar rehearsed her timing on the lattice so the final upload would sing instead of groan. Cade asked 3 people who had not spoken to speak, and they all said no. And he said that was fine, and the right to silence is also a thing you can measure. Praetor Sayre returned for the second session looking both older and less made. The barber had given up. His tie was a knot instead of a geometry lesson. He spoke before the court could invite him. Too brisk to be coached. "We will adopt the court's standard," he said. "We will remove the multiplier. We will not bill for witnesses." "And your apology?" Osei asked. Quiet. He swallowed a small pride. "We regret the harm caused by our policy," he said, and stopped himself from adding, "if any," which was an act of self-preservation we rewarded with nothing but the absence of a frown. Powerline, real change arrives without fanfare and leaves a receipt. Aurora Court asked me to close for plaster. I stood in the ops blister that smelled like metal and cardamom and blankets and breathed once to find my spine. My mouth tasted like old coffee and a better word for justice than any prayer I had learned. I could feel the cracked plate at my back like a friend who would not let me lean too far. I was taught. I said, that safety is a light you can see, and not a bill you have to pay in shame. I was taught that gratitude is a feeling you give a person, not a fee you owe a system. We could have ended this with a torpedo. We chose a ledger. We burned a plate and cool a room. We did not cool our voices. We have no more poetry than that. And we do not need it. The court did not clap. It wrote. Its final lines were short and will live longer than we will. It outlawed the shame tax in every lane it touched. It established that stewards cannot hold their own escrow. It required that return mechanisms be public and physical before they are sentimental and digital. It set a review cycle. It appointed a traveling panel of auditors from different stations without ties to the Concord or to us. It did not brand the Concord as evil. It did not brand us as saints. And then it did the thing that will echo where children sing it, called attention a right and banned billing for witness. Powerline looking as free. The court adjourned. The beacon cooled. The line of light along the glass softened like breath fading on a window. The salvage captain saluted nobody and left to fix a piston. The union clerk sent 3 emails and a recipe for soup. The teacher gave the class homework that was not a number. The nurse slept for 80 minutes and woke ready to count again. We moved into the day that comes after a win that does not fill your mouth with sweetness. It filled it with work. Concord's deputy sent a practical message about transfer windows and recalculated routes. He did not apologize for his earlier line. He signed with his own name, which we respected even as we archived the sentence where he named the caller. Prater Serre sent nothing. He would be fighting an invisible fire. He would be making promises he could not keep without making enemies he could not afford. He would be learning how to lose with grace or to lose loudly. I did not wish him pain. I did not wish him comfort either. I wished him work. Archivist 12 asked to mark the public ledger with the precedent lock. Osei nodded, and I breathed and made my voice the straightest it had been all week. Publish, I said. The AI's filing tone was a tiny bell. It rang through the lattice and across the beacons and into the ships where people were not listening and still heard it. The ledger entry read, Charter Addendum 4012-88K, Pilaster, Aurora Prohibition of Witness Billing and Duplicate Projection Buffers, Stewardship Escrow Separation Mandate, Returns shall be physical first, effective immediately, Review 6 cycles, Violations visible. We watched the words take their seat in a book that had outlived Conquerors and would outlive me. We did not cheer, not because we were dignified, but because we were tired. Powerline tired and clean is a kind of victory. 3 days later, a courier arrived with 2 crates of medical pump components paid for by a recalculated return. The nurse cried and then laughed because her pump made the sound of a cat when it fails, and this one purred like a cat that stayed. The baker reopened the oven and burned the first batch because she was telling a story while measuring with her nose. She did not pretend she was a hero. She was a person who made bread. She will be remembered longer than I will. Prater Serre filed an appeal that would not find purchase because policy had changed under him, like ice under a runner's foot. He would learn to walk in shoes that felt different. He would miss his old stride. I know that pain. I felt it when I stepped off a ship and had to learn to count with laws instead of rifles. I felt humiliated. I felt helpless. Then I felt better. Then I felt nothing, which is its own danger. And I learned to feel again when a child with a plastic toy drew a circle on a window and asked if numbers get tired. We sent a letter to the anonymous clerk. We did not ask for their name. We thanked them without ceremony. We told them we would not make them a statue. We told them if they wanted to stand in the light, they would be welcome, and if they wanted to stay where they were just as welcome. We told them we would read their grandfather's line aloud wherever we found it and measure it against the cost we had learned with our own heat. Power line, gratitude without collar, memory without song that punishes. I walked the ring with Cade and Pilar and Ose, and 3 techs whose names deserve to live as long as mine. We stopped by the cracked plate because humans mark stones. We ate bread that tasted like cardamom and a little engine oil. We drank coffee that tasted like a joke we could now afford to tell. We counted the children in the canteen with a glance and decided that was enough for today. "Commander," Cade said, "what did we win?" "Not a parade," I said. "An invoice." He laughed and shook his head. "You should teach." "I was taught," I said, and touched the glass where the quartz line had been. It left no mark. That is how good lines are. Power line. Some lights leave nothing but a way to walk. Ose drafted a short letter to be posted beside the ledger entry in places where people still read walls. It said the doctrine had been read and found heavy in the wrong direction. It said the audience was not a fire. It said we paid a plate and a night, and we got a rule. It said people helped. It did not say heroes. Archivist 12 asked for permission to archive one more thing, the sound of the nurses' pumps in the moment they stabilized. Why, I asked, so future auditors will know what return sounds like. It said, "File it," I said. The file sounded like a room breathing. Power line, a quiet room is a paid diet. We received our first formal complaint from a fan of the Concord, a long message about order and respect and how charity needs structure. We replied with the ledger entry and a picture of the cracked plate. They replied with silence, which we remembered gently, without score. On the 5th day, the child with the skimmer asked if she could show me a trick. She pressed her toe skimmer to the glass and moved it in a figure 8 tight as a knot, then made the loop break into a line like a magician snapping a ring. "You can draw lines," she said, echoing the belt rock boy. "Even when people like circles." "That's how we travel," I said. "Is the praetor going to be mad forever?" she asked. "No," I said. "He might be tired forever. That is different." "Is tired bad?" "Sometimes tired means you worked," I said. "Sometimes it means you carried a weight no one should." Power line, we can't make the weight go away. We can share the carry. The union clerk sent us a photograph of a notice in another system. Local stewards had tried to bill a market day's audience for visibility risk. The notice had been torn down, and a copy of the charter addendum had been pinned up instead with a knitting needle. "People are fast," she wrote. "Faster than policy thinks." The salvage captain sent a video of his crew arguing about the best word for what we had done. One said trial. One said trick. One said counting. The cook said supper. They all agreed on receipt. Aurora Quartz Beacon drifted out toward the next quarrel like a comet with fewer illusions. It left a docket like a pale contrail. Its tone faded. The station noise returned recyclers. Boots, the exact sigh pipes make when they expand, because heat has chosen mercy. I slept like a person whose window does not rattle when trucks go by anymore. Later, When the Concorde's appeal failed with the quiet of a file returned for correction, we received the formal copy of the precedent lock, embossed by a machine that still believed in seals. It looked like a wedding invitation to a marriage you weren't sure you wanted until you saw the names. I carried it to the cracked plate and read it aloud to Metal and passed. The station listened in the way stations do, by humming softer. Powerline, what we say to paper, changes what we do in metal. There is an image I keep coming back to when I think of the week we counted a doctrine and found it wanting. It is not the court's beacon, or the praetor's jawline, or the ledger entry taking its chair. It is the baker's hand shaking flour into a bowl by feel, and then adjusting by smell because someone took the weights. She did not stop baking. She learned a new way to measure until the old weights came back. And then she kept both methods, because she might need both again. We will need both again. Numbers and noses. Courtrooms and kitchens. Mirrors and the quiet courage to stand in front of them. At the end, I dictated the closing few lines required by the docket, a monologue with a limit, because limits are a kind of mercy. I stood in the ops blister and watched footprints fade on the glass where children had pressed their toes. The air smelled like warm dust and clean metal and the ghost of cardamom. The pumps purred like cats that stayed. We did not win because we were righteous. We won because we showed figures and carried costs where everyone could see. We burned a plate, cooled a room, and made a rule. We did not humiliate a man. We humiliated a method. We set a ledger line that will outlive our names. When the starving winter comes, and it will, someone will look up the rule and breathe warmer because we were tired and clean and did not take the discount. Public ledger entry blinking confirmed. We do not break the world. We balance it.